You people always have an excuse, don't you, Mr. Langford? The judge's gavel slammed down like a gunshot, echoing through the suffocating silence of the courtroom. Decades in prison. That's what you're looking at, and I won't lose a single wink of sleep. Darius Langford clenched his chained hands, his heart pounding a desperate rhythm against his ribs. He was innocent. But the system wasn't built for his innocence. It was built for Judge Harlan Whitfield's prejudice. What the arrogant, untouchable judge didn't know was that a ticking time bomb was about to detonate his pristine career right in the middle of his own courtroom. The Fulton County Courthouse was a towering monolith of cold marble and unforgiving mahogany, a place where futures were dictated by the swing of a wooden mallet. In courtroom 302, the air conditioning always ran too cold, a physical manifestation of the man who presided over it. Honorable Judge Harlan Whitfield. He was a man with perfectly coiffed silver hair, a sharp jawline, and eyes as dead and gray as a winter sky. For years, he had built a reputation as a tough-on-crime jurist, a darling of the local political establishment. But behind the closed doors of his chambers, Whitfield harbored a deep, venomous prejudice. He viewed his courtroom not as a hall of justice, but as a filtration system, and he was the gatekeeper keeping the undesirables off the streets of Atlanta. Sitting at the defense table, wearing a faded but meticulously ironed suit that was 2 sizes too big, was Darius Langford. He was not a criminal. He was a dedicated paramedic at Grady Memorial Hospital, a man who spent his nights pulling crash victims out of mangled cars and reviving overdose patients in the unforgiving neon glow of the ER bays. He had a spotless record, a credit score he was proud of, and a younger sister he was putting through nursing school. But none of that mattered to Judge Whitfield. When Whitfield looked at Darius, he didn't see a lifesaver. He saw a stereotype. Darius had been locked up in the county jail for months, denied bail on the absurd grounds that he was a flight risk. The charge? Aggravated assault on a police officer and resisting arrest with violence. The penalty if convicted? Up to decades in a state penitentiary. Mr. Langford, Judge Whitfield drawled, his voice dripping with condescension as he peered over his half-moon reading glasses. Your attorney has filed yet another motion to dismiss based on what is this? Lack of physical evidence? Need I remind counsel that the sworn testimony of an officer of the law is evidence enough in this state? Lila Hart, Darius's public defender, a fiery, overworked woman who hadn't slept a full night in years, stood her ground. Your Honor, my client is accused of brutally assaulting Officer Kane, yet Darius Langford weighs far less, and Officer Kane is a former linebacker. Furthermore, the supposed Axon Bodycam footage of the incident is mysteriously missing. We cannot proceed to trial without— Overruled, Whitfield snapped, slamming his gavel. The sound made Darius flinch. Officer Kane reported a battery malfunction with his Axon unit. Equipment fails, Ms. Hart. The Atlanta Police Department is underfunded, as we all know. I will not have you turning my courtroom into a circus just because your client refuses to take accountability for his violent outbursts. Darius looked at the polished wood of the table, his reflection staring back at him, hollow-eyed, exhausted, terrified. He remembered the night of the arrest perfectly. There had been no violence on his part, only compliance, terror, and the blinding flash of police lights. But in this room, reality didn't matter. Only Whitfield's narrative did. Trial begins soon, Whitfield declared, adjusting his black silk robes with a smug, self-satisfied smirk. And Ms. Hart, I suggest you advise your client to consider a plea deal. Juries in my courtroom tend to look very, very unfavorably on unrepentant thugs. As the bailiffs roughly hauled Darius to his feet, the chains around his ankles clinking heavily against the linoleum floor, he locked eyes with the judge. Whitfield wasn't looking at him with anger. He was looking at him with absolute terrifying indifference, the look of a man squashing an ant. Darius felt a tear of pure, unadulterated helplessness slide down his cheek. He was going to lose his life, his career, his sister's future, all because of a broken taillight and a racist judge's vendetta. The memory of the arrest played in Darius's mind on a relentless, agonizing loop every night in his cell. It was a torrential night. Darius was driving home after a brutal shift at Grady Memorial. His scrubs were stained with iodine, and his muscles ached with a bone-deep fatigue. He was driving his beat-up Honda Civic down Interstate 85, navigating the slick, hydroplane-prone asphalt with extreme caution. The rain was coming down in sheets, blurring the city lights into streaks of neon. Suddenly, the unmistakable strobe of blue and red erupted in his rearview mirror. Darius's stomach dropped, a universal reflex, even though he knew he hadn't been speeding. He engaged his turn signal and slowly pulled over onto the muddy gravel of the shoulder, putting his car in park, turning off the engine, and placing both hands flat on the top of the steering wheel. He knew the drill. In his neighborhood, you were taught the survival rules before you were taught long division. Officer Victor Kane approached the vehicle. Even in the heavy rain, Kane was an imposing figure. His tactical vest bulked out, a heavy maglite flashlight in his hand. "License and registration now," Kane barked, not bothering with a greeting. "Yes, sir. It's in my glove compartment. I'm going to reach for it now," Darius said, his voice calm but trembling slightly from the cold. "Did I tell you to move?" Kane snapped, shining the blinding beam of the flashlight directly into Darius's eyes. "Step out of the vehicle. You're acting erratic." "Officer, I'm just tired. I just got off a shift at the hospital." "Step out of the damn car!" Kane roared, ripping the driver's side door open. Before Darius could even unbuckle his seatbelt, Kane's massive hands clamped onto his scrub top, violently yanking him out into the freezing rain. Darius hit the wet asphalt hard, scraping his knees and elbows. "Stop resisting! Quit fighting me, boy!" Kane yelled, driving a knee into Darius's lower back. "I'm not fighting! I'm not fighting!" Darius screamed, his face pressed into the muddy gravel, tasting dirt and blood. He placed his hands behind his back, offering no resistance, praying the officer wouldn't pull his service weapon. Darius felt the cold steel of handcuffs ratcheting brutally tight around his wrists, cutting off the circulation. Kane hauled him to his feet by the cuffs, sending a jolt of agonizing pain through Darius's shoulders. "Assaulting an officer," Kane panted, turning to his rookie partner who had just jogged up from the cruiser. "You saw it, rookie. He took a swing at me." "What? No, I didn't do anything," Darius pleaded, rain mixing with the blood on his face. He looked at the glowing green light on the center of Kane's chest, the Axon body camera. "Your camera is on. The camera saw everything. I didn't touch you." Kane looked down at his chest. A sinister, knowing smile crept across his face. He reached up, his thumb pressing down on the device. The glowing green light blinked, then died. "What camera?" Kane sneered, shoving Darius headfirst into the back of the patrol cruiser. For the following months, the state's narrative became concrete. Officer Kane testified at the preliminary hearing that Darius had become unhinged, shouting obscenities, and had thrown a wild punch that caught him in the jaw. The rookie officer, intimidated by his veteran partner and the corrupt ecosystem of his precinct, corroborated the lie. The prosecutor, a ruthless climber named Preston Hale, painted Darius as a ticking time bomb who snapped under pressure. And the missing video? The official statement submitted to the court claimed that due to extreme weather conditions and a faulty lithium-ion battery, Officer Kane's Axon body camera experienced a catastrophic power failure prior to the physical altercation. Lila Hart had fought tooth and nail to subpoena the metadata from Axon's cloud storage system, evidence.com, hoping to prove the camera was manually switched off. But Judge Whitfield had blocked the subpoena, citing undue burden on the police department and calling it a fishing expedition. Darius was trapped in a web of lies, spun by a cop funded by the state and protected by the Gavel. As the trial date loomed, the reality of decades in a cage began to crush his spirit, suffocating the last remaining embers of his hope. The trial began on a sweltering morning. The courtroom was packed. Darius's younger sister, Aaliyah, sat in the front row clutching a worn Bible, her eyes red from crying. Darius gave her a weak, reassuring nod, though he felt hollow inside. Jury selection had been a masterclass in legal manipulation. Every time Lila Hart attempted to seat a juror of color, Prosecutor Hale found a race-neutral reason to strike them. One had a cousin in jail. Another seemed disrespectful to the court. Judge Whitfield upheld every single strike with a wave of his hand. The resulting jury was overwhelmingly white, older, and from the affluent suburbs of Fulton County. Darius felt his fate sealing with every juror sworn in. The prosecution's case rested entirely on the broad, uniform-clad shoulders of Officer Victor Kane. When Kane took the stand, he was the picture of patriotic duty. He spoke in a calm, measured tone, detailing his years of service before pivoting to the night of the arrest. The defendant was sweating profusely, his eyes were dilated, and he refused lawful orders, Kane testified, looking earnestly at the jury box. When I asked him to step out, he lunged at me. He struck me in the face, causing a laceration to my cheek. I had to use necessary force to subdue him for my own safety and the safety of my partner. Thank you, Officer Kane, Hale said, walking back to his table with a triumphant smirk. Your witness. Lila Hart stood, buttoning her jacket, her eyes blazing. Officer Kane, you testified you sustained a laceration to your cheek, yet the medical report from that night shows only a minor razor bump that was irritated by the rain. Is it possible you cut yourself shaving? Objection, Hale shouted. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Whitfield droned lazily, not even looking up from his paperwork. Ms. Hart, let's not waste the court's time with petty theories. Officer, Lila continued, gritting her teeth. You claim my client was sweating and his eyes were dilated. Could that be because he had just worked a grueling shift in an emergency room saving lives? Objection. Relevance. Sustained. The jury will disregard the defense's romanticized view of the defendant's employment, Whitfield interjected, a cruel smile playing on his lips. Proceed, counsel, but do so with caution. Lila took a deep breath. Officer Kane, let's talk about the Axon body camera, the one that conveniently died moments before this alleged assault. Kane stiffened slightly. It was a battery malfunction. It happens. Does it? Lila stepped closer. Axon cameras emit a loud double beep when manually powered down. My client claims he saw the green light on, and then saw you manually press the button to turn it off. Objection! Hearsay! Speculation! Hale practically leapt out of his chair. Judge Whitfield brought his gavel down with a violent crack. Sustained. Ms. Hart, you are on dangerously thin ice. You will not stand in my courtroom and accuse a decorated officer of tampering with evidence without a shred of proof. One more outburst like that, and I will hold you in contempt. But, Your Honor, the defense must be allowed to question the— I said sustained, counselor, Whitfield bellowed, his face turning a mottled red. He leaned over the bench, glaring down at Darius. This court will not tolerate the defense throwing mud at the wall to see what sticks. Move on. Darius dropped his head into his hands. It was over. The trial wasn't a search for the truth. It was a theatrical production designed to rubber stamp his conviction. Judge Whitfield wasn't an impartial referee. He was the captain of the opposing team. By the time court adjourned for the day, the atmosphere was suffocating. Closing arguments were scheduled for the next day. Darius was going to prison. It was late when Lila Hart sat alone in her cramped, windowless office, the glow of her laptop screen illuminating the dark circles under her eyes. Empty coffee cups littered her desk like a graveyard of failed caffeine attempts. She was drafting her closing argument, trying to find a way, any way, to inject reasonable doubt into a jury that had already been brainwashed by Judge Whitfield. Her personal cell phone buzzed on the desk. She ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Irritated, she snatched it up. It was an unknown number. "Hello?" she answered, her voice gravelly from exhaustion. "Is this Lila Hart, attorney for Darius Langford?" The voice on the other end was distorted, muffled, as if speaking through a thick scarf or a voice changer. "Yes, who is this?" "Someone who hates a rigged game," the voice whispered. "Judge Whitfield has been orchestrating these convictions for years. Kane is one of his favorite attack dogs. They target minority defendants, stack the charges, and Whitfield ensures the defense is handicapped." Lila sat up straight, her heart suddenly hammering against her ribs. "Who are you? If you have evidence, you need to testify." "I can't. They'd ruin me. Maybe kill me. But I work in the APD Tech Forensics Unit. I audit the evidence.com cloud uploads. When a camera is manually shut off, it doesn't just instantly die. It triggers a buffer protocol. It saves the preceding minutes and continues recording for another period to ensure no critical incidents are lost during power down." Lila gasped, her mind racing. "Are you saying the footage exists?" Kane thought turning off the camera killed the feed immediately. It didn't. It recorded him. It recorded the assault. And more importantly, it recorded the phone call he made right after he threw your client in the cruiser. Check your encrypted email, counselor. The one listed on your state bar profile. I've sent you a secure link to the raw, unedited MP4 file, completely bypassing the department's internal locks. Do not waste this. Click. The line went dead. Lila's hands were shaking so violently she could barely type her password. She opened her secure email portal. Sitting at the top of her inbox was an unmarked email with a single hyperlink. She clicked it. A loading bar appeared. Decrypting. A video file popped onto her screen. She put her headphones on and hit play. The video was crystal clear footage. It showed the rain on the windshield. It showed Kane violently yanking Darius from the car. It clearly showed Darius's hands open, offering zero resistance as Kane slammed him into the mud, driving a knee into his spine. It proved Darius's innocence entirely, but the video kept playing. The camera was pointed at the ground, then the dashboard of the cruiser. Kane had tossed his vest on the passenger seat. The audio was pristine. "Yeah, got another one." Kane's voice echoed through Lila's headphones. He was on his cell phone. "I-85 North. Yeah, he was mouthy. Tagged him with resisting an assault." A pause. Then the tinny, unmistakable voice of the person on the other end of the phone bled through the receiver into the camera's microphone. "Good work, Marcus. What's his background?" Lila froze. The blood drained from her face. She knew that drawl. She knew that condescending, arrogant tone. It was Judge Harlan Whitfield. "He's a medic at Grady," Kane replied. "Clean." "Not anymore," Whitfield chuckled darkly over the phone. "These thugs think they can wear scrubs, and suddenly they're upstanding citizens. Lock that thug up, Marcus. You write the report however you need to. Bring him into my courtroom. I'll deny bail, bleed him dry, and make sure he never sees the sun as a free man again. We have to keep our streets clean of these animals." "Copy that, Your Honor," Kane laughed, ending the call. The video abruptly cut to black. Lila sat back in her chair, the breath knocked out of her lungs. It wasn't just a cover-up. It was a conspiracy. A sitting Superior Court judge actively conspiring with a corrupt police officer to manufacture a felony conviction based on racial prejudice. She looked at the clock. Court resumed in the morning. She grabbed a heavy-duty encrypted flash drive from her drawer, dragged the file onto it, and smiled. It was a cold, dangerous smile. "Checkmate, Your Honor," she whispered to the empty room. The courtroom was tense the next morning. The air felt thick, heavy with the impending doom of a guilty verdict. Darius sat at the defense table, his head bowed, resigned to his fate. He had spent the morning praying for strength, preparing himself for the terrifying reality of a prison cell. Judge Whitfield swept into the room, his black robes billowing, looking like a king taking his throne. "Be seated," he commanded. "Counsel, we are here for closing arguments. Mr. Hale, the state may proceed." "Hold on, Your Honor," Lila Hart said, standing up. Her voice was uncharacteristically calm, ringing with an iron authority that made everyone in the room pause. "The defense has a motion." Whitfield narrowed his eyes, clearly annoyed. "Ms. Hart, the time for motions has passed. We are at closing arguments. Sit down." "Your Honor, last night the defense received a piece of exculpatory evidence, newly discovered Brady material, that exonerates my client and proves perjury on the part of the state's star witness." Prosecutor Preston Hale jumped up. "Objection. This is a stunt. We have not been provided with any new discovery." "That is because the evidence implicates the highest levels of this courtroom, Mr. Hale," Lila shot back, holding up the silver flash drive. "I hold in my hand the unedited, full-length Axon Bodycam footage from Officer Kane on the night of the arrest. Footage the APD claimed did not exist." Chaos erupted in the gallery. Reporters in the back row sat up, pulling out their notepads. Darius's head snapped up, staring at Lila in disbelief. Judge Whitfield's face went pale, but he quickly recovered his composure, his jaw clenching with fury. "Bailiff, confiscate that drive." "Miss Hart, you are out of line. I will not allow unauthenticated last-minute gimmicks in my courtroom. Motion denied." "Your Honor, denying the introduction of this evidence is a direct violation of my client's 6th and 14th Amendment rights," Lila projected, her voice carrying over the murmurs of the crowd. "If you refuse to allow the jury to see this, I will immediately file an emergency writ with the state Supreme Court, and I will hand this drive directly to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, as it contains evidence of a federal civil rights conspiracy." The courtroom fell dead silent. The threat was nuclear. Whitfield stared at Lila, his eyes twitching. He was trapped. If he suppressed it, and she went to the FBI, it would look like a cover-up. If he played it, he assumed it would just show the arrest. He didn't know about the hot mic. He thought he could still spin it. "Fine," Whitfield spat, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. "Play the video, and when it proves to be a waste of our time, you will be spending the night in a holding cell for contempt, counselor." The bailiff connected the flash drive to the courtroom's AV system. 2 large monitors flanking the jury box flickered to life. The video began. The jury gasped as they watched Officer Kane violently assault a completely compliant Darius Langford. They watched Darius get shoved into the mud. They watched the brutal, unprovoked force. Prosecutor Hale looked physically sick, realizing his entire case was built on a massive, undeniable lie. But the video didn't stop. The camera looked at the dashboard. Kane's voice echoed through the courtroom speakers. "Yeah, got another one. I-85 North. Yeah, he was mouthy. Tagged him with resisting an assault." Judge Whitfield's eyes widened in absolute horror. He gripped the wooden edges of his bench so hard his knuckles turned white. He reached for his gavel, his mouth opening to shout an order to stop the video. But vocal paralysis took over. Then the judge's own voice boomed through the courtroom. "Good work, Marcus. What's his background?" The jury looked confused. Then realization dawned. They looked from the screen up to the man sitting in the black robes. "He's a medic at Grady. Clean record. Not anymore. These thugs think they can wear scrubs. and suddenly they're upstanding citizens. Lock that thug up, Marcus. You write the report however you need to. Bring him into my courtroom. I'll deny bail, bleed him dry, and make sure he never sees the sun as a free man again. We have to keep our streets clean of these animals." The silence in the courtroom was apocalyptic. It was a vacuum sucking the oxygen out of the room. Every single eye, the jury, the bailiffs, the prosecutor, the gallery, was locked onto Judge Harlan Whitfield. The untouchable god of courtroom 302 had just been utterly, completely destroyed by his own hubris. Pandemonium broke loose. It was like a dam had burst. Darius's sister screamed in shock and relief. Reporters were scrambling over benches, shoving each other to rush out the double doors and break the story of the decade. "Order! Order in the court!" Whitfield bellowed, his voice cracking, slamming his gavel with the desperation of a drowning man. But the gavel held no power anymore. It was just a hollow piece of wood hitting a desk. The authority it represented had evaporated the moment his racist conspiracy echoed through the speakers. "Your Honor," Prosecutor Hale said, his voice shaking. He slowly packed his briefcase, refusing to look up at the bench. "The state drops all charges against Mr. Langford with prejudice. We rest." Hale essentially ran out of the courtroom, desperate to distance himself from the radioactive fallout. "Bailiff, unshackle." "Shackle my client, now," Lila demanded. The bailiff, a veteran officer who looked utterly disgusted by what he had just heard, didn't even wait for the judge's order. He pulled out his keys and quickly unlocked Darius's handcuffs and ankle chains. The heavy metal fell to the floor with a loud, symbolic clatter. Darius collapsed into his chair, burying his face in his hands, sobbing uncontrollably as the immense crushing weight of the last months vanished. This is an illegal recording," Whitfield stammered, his face a sickening shade of gray. Sweat poured down his forehead, ruining his perfect hair. "It's inadmissible. I am the judge in this courtroom." "Not anymore, Harlan," a voice rang out from the back of the courtroom. The heavy oak doors swung open, and 3 men in sharp suits walked in. On their lapels were the golden badges of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, flanked by agents from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Lila Hart had sent a copy of the video to the DOJ Civil Rights Division earlier that morning. They had been waiting in the hallway. The lead FBI agent walked directly past the defense table, giving Darius a brief, respectful nod, and approached the bench. "Judge Harlan Whitfield," the agent said, his voice echoing in the suddenly quiet room. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to deprive rights under color of law, obstruction of justice, and federal civil rights violations. Step down from the bench, sir." "You can't do this! I have absolute judicial immunity," Whitfield screeched, backing away from the bench, clutching his robes like a shield. "Immunity doesn't cover criminal conspiracy, Your Honor. Put your hands behind your back." The gallery watched in stunned, vindicated silence as the agents escorted Judge Whitfield down from his pedestal. They forced his hands behind his back and secured them with handcuffs. The arrogant, untouchable jurist was perp-walked out of his own courtroom, looking small, pathetic, and broken. Outside the courthouse, Darius walked through the heavy glass doors and breathed in the hot Georgia air. It tasted like freedom. He pulled his sister into a tight, desperate hug, tears of joy streaming down his face. Lila Hart stood beside them, smiling as the sun hit her face for the first time in days. The karma was absolute. Officer Kane was arrested later that day in his precinct parking lot. Both he and Whitfield were denied bail by a newly appointed federal magistrate who cited them as a danger to the community. In the months that followed, Darius Langford was back at Grady Memorial Hospital, saving lives, hailed as a local hero. He had filed a massive civil rights lawsuit against the city and the APD, resulting in a substantial settlement that ensured his sister would graduate nursing school debt-free and his family would never have to worry about money again. As for Harlan Whitfield, he traded his black silk robes for an orange jumpsuit. He was convicted by a federal jury, a jury consisting of the very diverse working-class citizens he had spent his career targeting and disenfranchising. He was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. His legacy was erased, his pension revoked, and his name became a permanent stain on the history of Fulton County. A textbook example of what happens when a corrupt system finally catches its own reflection in the mirror of justice. Wow, what an incredible story of absolute justice. Darius Langford went from facing decades in prison for a crime he didn't commit to exposing a deeply corrupt racist judge on a federal level. It is a powerful reminder that the truth always finds a way to come to light, no matter how deeply it's buried under the gavel of corruption. Hard karma always comes to collect its dues. If this story of truth, justice, and the ultimate payback got your heart racing, make sure you smash that like button. Share this video with your friends to spread awareness about the importance of accountability in our justice system. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on more incredible dramatic stories where the bad guys finally get what's coming to them. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of Judge Whitfield's epic downfall. See you in the next one.